Mara never planned to wake up at 3 a.m. every night. At first, the timing felt random, like the kind of sleepless interruption everyone experiences from time to time. But gradually, something about those awakenings began to feel intentional, almost like a tap on the shoulder from a presence that didn't want to be seen in daylight. She'd lie there in the soft dark, listening to the hum of her apartment, feeling an invisible weight pressing against her thoughts. And although she didn't yet have the language for it, she sensed that something was watching, something that fed on attention, fear, or simply the act of forgetting. For years she had heard whispers about the idea that this world might not be what it seemed. But she always brushed them off. She had classes to attend, bills to pay, people to comfort, and a life to keep moving. It was easier not to look too closely at the cracks in the surface of reality. Yet the cracks kept widening. She started noticing how her dreams felt structured, almost curated, as if they were being designed to keep her distracted. Sometimes, when she jolted awake during those 3 a.m. hours, she felt as though she'd just escaped from a place she didn't fully understand, a place where her thoughts weren't entirely her own. One morning, after yet another restless night, she stumbled across an old story about a teacher named Jalen, an obscure spiritual figure whose words had long been overshadowed by more dominant traditions. People whispered that Jalen had spoken openly about a false creator, a being who shaped the physical world but couldn't touch the true source beyond it. According to the story, this being, the warden of the world, constructed layers of illusion that trapped souls in cycles of fear and forgetfulness. And the more deeply a soul forgot its origin, the easier it became to control. Something inside Mara clicked with that description. It echoed something she had always suspected but never wanted to admit. The world often felt like a maze built to entertain, distract, and exhaust. And the deeper she looked into Jalen's teachings, the more that strange pressure she felt at 3 a.m. began to make sense. Jalen had warned his students that the mind, especially during sleep, was the easiest doorway for the warden to manipulate. Dreams weren't just random pictures. They were maintenance routines. Emotional resets. Memory smudging. But Jalen hadn't left his students defenseless. He had taught them a quiet, almost childlike bedtime prayer that didn't fight the system head-on but slipped around it. He explained that the warden could manipulate dreams, emotions, fears, even certain memories, yet it could not override a soul's direct request to remain awake in spirit. If the soul declared its refusal to be altered during sleep, the illusion was forced to loosen its grip. Not break entirely, but soften just enough to let the deeper self remain aware. The prayer was simple, gentle, and easily mistaken for nothing significant. But according to legend, those who practiced it consistently began seeing through the dream prison. They started remembering more, both in dreams and in waking life. They felt less emotionally hijacked by old narratives that used to keep them trapped. And although the warden noticed this resistance, it could do little except push back with subtle disturbances, shaken dreams, restless nights, moments of surreal heaviness. As Mara read the ancient words, she felt a sudden warmth move through her chest. Not like a rush of emotion, but like recognition. Like something inside her had been waiting for this exact moment. She couldn't explain why, but she knew she had seen the prayer before. Maybe in a dream, maybe in a lifetime she had forgotten, maybe in the split-second silence between thoughts when the world feels like it's holding its breath. Wherever she had seen it, the familiarity was undeniable. That night, when the lights were off and the hum of the room settled into its usual background static, she whispered the prayer softly into the darkness. She wasn't sure if she believed it. She wasn't even sure who she was speaking to. But she felt something shift, just slightly, as if a curtain in her inner world had loosened from its rod. And then she slept. The dreams weren't the usual chaos. They were distant, muted, almost like she was observing them instead of being trapped inside them. And when she woke up, still at 3 a.m., but clear-headed this time, she felt as though she had dodged a net that tried to close around her. She didn't know it yet, but this was the first sign that the prayer was working. Mara didn't tell anyone about the strange calm she felt after that first night. It wasn't the kind of experience you could casually mention over breakfast or between classes. Instead, she carried it quietly, turning it over in her mind like a smooth stone. And the more she revisited the memory of that dreamless clarity, the more she wanted to understand why the prayer had affected her so strongly. Something in it felt older than language, older than the world she walked through each day. She went back to the manuscript she'd found, its pages scanned into a forgotten corner of the digital world, and started reading with new attention. That was when she realized the prayer wasn't just a spiritual comfort mantra. It was structured, deliberate, almost mathematical in the way its three parts worked together, each one acting as a key that unlocked a different door in consciousness. The first line was the key of non-consent. Jalen had taught that the warden, the false architect, could influence only what the soul allowed, even unconsciously. So the prayer began by withdrawing silent permission. Not angrily, not defiantly, but firmly and peacefully. A simple refusal that drew a boundary around the inner self, signaling to the dream world that its authority had limits. Mara practiced saying it slowly, letting each word settle in her mind before she fell asleep. And each time she spoke it, she felt the atmosphere of the room shift, as if unseen eyes turned away. The second line was the key of remembering. It invited her deeper self to remain awake even while her body slept. Not in a literal sense, her physical eyes would still close, her breathing would still slow, but her awareness would hover just above the dream veil. It was like asking the heart to become the night's observer, guiding her through whatever landscapes appeared. When she whispered this line, she felt a soft current rise in her chest, like a warm ribbon unwinding gently through her ribs. The third line was the key of escape. It directed her awareness into the present moment, the one place the warden couldn't follow. According to Jalen, the illusion relied on keeping minds tangled in past regrets or future fears. But true presence, deep presence, was a frequency the false architect couldn't access. So the prayer ended by anchoring the soul in a timeless point of stillness, a doorway to the source that pulsed beneath all things. As Mara practiced the three keys, she noticed her nights beginning to change. Her dreams grew lighter, less emotionally overwhelming. Scenes that used to drag her into fear or confusion now felt like faint drawings on thin paper, she could see through them. Sometimes she found herself drifting through dream corridors that dissolved the moment she questioned them. At other times, she sensed figures watching from a distance, their outlines flickering like shadows startled by light. But the most surprising change came during her 3 a.m. awakenings. Instead of feeling weighed down, she felt lifted, alert, steady, almost serene. The pressure that used to tighten around her thoughts had loosened. The air in the room felt softer. Even the silence seemed different, more like a companion than a threat. One night, after practicing the prayer with unusual clarity, she dreamt of standing inside a great hall filled with golden light. The walls were carved with patterns she couldn't decipher, spirals and lines that seemed to move when she didn't look directly at them. At the far end of the hall stood a figure, tall, gentle, radiant but not blinding. She couldn't make out a face, but she felt an unmistakable sense of recognition, as though she had stood with this being many times before across lifetimes she could no longer recall. The figure spoke without speaking. Its words arrived in her mind as warm impressions, soft and unmistakably real. "You are remembering," it told her. "But the system will not release you easily. Stay steady. Stay present. And do not fear the pushback." Mara woke with tears on her cheeks, tears not of sadness but of overwhelming familiarity. She didn't understand the full meaning of the message, but she felt its truth vibrating in her chest. Something was shifting in her life, in her dreams, in the unseen layers of reality. And the prayer wasn't just a bedtime ritual anymore. It had become a compass. Over the next few days, she noticed subtle resistance from the world around her. Random moments of irritation. Sudden waves of exhaustion. Dreams that tried to pull her back into old fears. It was as if the illusion itself had sensed her slipping through its fingers and was trying to tighten its grip. But each night, she returned to the prayer. Each night, she whispered its 3 gentle keys. And each night, the dream prison weakened, just a little more. Days turned into weeks, and Mara's life on the surface looked almost the same. She still walked the same streets, answered the same messages, showed up to the same responsibilities. But inside, the landscape had changed completely. The old feeling of being dragged through her days by invisible strings had softened. There was more space between her thoughts, more room to breathe. She noticed that when people around her were caught in spirals of fear or drama, something in her stayed quietly anchored, like a flame protected inside a glass lantern. The nightly prayer had become as natural to her as brushing her teeth. Yet it never felt mechanical. Each evening, when the light dimmed and the world began to blur, she would slow her breathing and move gently through the 3 keys. The refusal. The remembering. The returning to presence. She didn't rush any of it. She spoke the words as if she was explaining something tender to a younger version of herself, reassuring that version that they were no longer alone inside the dark. That was when the signs of deeper escape began to show up in ways she couldn't ignore. Her 3 a.m. awakenings changed first. They didn't always happen, but when they did, she woke up not in panic but in clarity. Sometimes she opened her eyes with a sentence already formed in her mind, an insight about a pattern she'd been stuck in for years, or a gentle nudge about a choice she needed to make. On other nights, she woke with the quiet knowledge that some old wound had just been released in her dreams, like a knot in her chest finally loosening without a struggle. Her dreams themselves grew more lucid. She started recognizing them not as reality, but as a shared mental field changing shape around her. When a nightmare began to form, she could feel the architecture of fear trying to pull her in. And instead of fighting it, she simply remembered, I do not consent to being altered while I sleep. The scene would flicker, distort, and then dissolve, as if a stage play had lost its audience and the actors had nowhere to stand. But with the signs of escape came the system's pushback. Some days, the world seemed to tilt subtly against her. Plans fell apart for no good reason. People projected old versions of her onto her face, refusing to see who she was becoming. Small inconveniences stacked on top of each other, like the matrix of reality was trying to exhaust her into dropping the practice. At times, a strange heaviness would wrap around her like a fog, whispering that all of this was pointless and she should just go back to sleep, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Instead of seeing these moments as failures, Mara began to recognize them as confirmation. The warden's grip tightened exactly where she was slipping free. That resistance was not a sign she was doing it wrong, it was evidence that she was no longer fully cooperating. One evening, after a particularly draining week, she sat by the window and watched the city lights shimmer in the distance. The thought drifted through her mind, if this prayer is helping me, maybe it's meant for more than just me. The idea made her both nervous and hopeful. She wasn't a preacher. She didn't want to argue about beliefs. She just wanted others who felt the same invisible weight to know they weren't imagining it. So she started small. When a friend mentioned waking at 3 a.m. feeling terrified and restless, Mara didn't launch into a lecture about the false architect or the prison of the mind. She simply said, in a calm tone, there's a little 3-line prayer I've been using before bed. It's not religious. It just tells your deeper self that it's allowed to stay awake, even while your body sleeps. If you'd like, I can send it to you. Some people brushed it off. Some forgot. But a few tried it. And those few came back with stories that sounded eerily familiar. My dreams feel different. I woke up feeling clearer than I have in years. It's like something can't get to me the way it used to. The more she heard, the more she understood that this wasn't just about her personal peace. It was about loosening the net on a collective level. Every person who reclaimed even a sliver of awareness during sleep weakened the structure of the dream prison for everyone else. Every soul that remembered its right to remain untouched during the night sent a quiet tremor through the system. Of course, the pushback adjusted. Sometimes it came through sudden waves of doubt, convincing her that she was making all of this up. Other times it flowed through people around her, who seemed irritated by her calm or suspicious of her new steadiness. And yet, beneath all of it, there was a deeper current that never wavered, a gentle hum of reassurance that flowed from the same golden presence she had seen in the dream hall. "You are not here to win a war," that inner voice seemed to say. "You are here to remember a frequency. To live it. To embody it quietly, in every breath. And in doing so, you help others remember too." Mara realized that escape didn't mean abandoning the world or physically leaving it behind. It meant seeing through it. It meant walking through the illusion without letting it define who she was. The warden could weave stories around her mind, but it could not touch the still point in her chest where the source gently pulsed. So she kept going. She whispered the prayer at night. She stayed present through the turbulence. She allowed the signs of freedom, clearer dreams, softer awakenings, quiet inner strength, to guide her more than the noise of fear. And somewhere, beyond the layers of constructed sky and scripted thought, the old architecture of the prison trembled, just slightly, as another soul remembered that it had never truly been owned. As we close this story, I want to speak directly to the part of you that stayed with it all the way through. If something in you recognized Mara's journey, not as fiction, but as a mirror, then this video isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder. A gentle tap on the shoulder at your own version of 3 a.m., asking if you're ready to look a little deeper at the patterns shaping your dreams, your days, and your sense of self. You don't need to adopt any particular belief system to work with what you've just heard. You don't need to fight some cosmic enemy or obsess over invisible forces. All you really need is a small, honest moment with yourself each night, a moment where you choose to withdraw consent from anything that doesn't honor your soul, invite your deeper awareness to stay awake, and anchor yourself in the present where your true power quietly lives. If this story brought you clarity, comfort, or even just a spark of curiosity, I'd love for you to stay connected. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. We're going to keep exploring these hidden layers of reality together, one gentle step at a time. If you felt your own experiences reflected in Mara's, tap the like button so this message can travel further through the algorithm and reach others who are silently wrestling with the same questions. And finally, if someone in your life keeps waking up at strange hours, feels constantly drained, or whispers that they don't belong in the world as it's presented, share this video with them. You never know, your simple act of sending a link might be the exact moment their own remembering begins. Thank you for watching, thank you for feeling this with me, and thank you for being brave enough to question the script. Until next time, sleep gently, stay present, and keep your inner light turned on.